Welcome back to Guns and Grilling. Today we're going to be laser focused on choosing the right suppressor, your first suppressor for the guns you own and for the way you shoot. We'll also be smoking a beautiful leg of lamb. As always, no politics, no nonsense, just good, fun content. Let's get it popping. All right, first things first. Quick legal and safety note. Suppressors are NFA regulated items, meaning transfers, tax stamps, and state rules will apply. I am not a lawyer, so please follow federal and local laws when procuring your first suppressor or any suppressor so you can avoid any potential legal issues. Now, let's jump in. So, we're going to focus on talking about things to consider before you buy your first suppressor. I believe you need to answer three initial questions. One, what calibers are you thinking about running on the suppressor? Two, what's going to be your primary use case for the suppressor? Is it going to be range? Is it going to be home defense? Is it going to be shooting long distance? What have you? So you really need to understand what's your primary use case. And then three, how often do you think you're going to want to swap cans between different hosts? The answers to those three simple questions will help narrow the field and point you to the right can for your needs. To be honest, before I bought my first suppressor, honestly, I wish I'd done a better job of answering those questions for myself. Because when I started on my suppressor journey, I thought about, you know, wanting to have a can that could run AR 5.56, 9 millimeter PCC, as well as a 9 millimeter pistol. And with that in mind and understanding that's what I really wanted to do, I landed on purchasing the Dead Air Wolfman, which is a multi-caliber rated can, which worked well, but getting it to swap easily between platforms required a little extra work. And then the other thing that I didn't factor in was all the purchase of all the extras, things like chemo hub adapters that to attach on the end of the suppressor to mate with your host firearm. You know, chemo QD muzzle brakes for the AR, key micro muzzle device for the PCC, and then a booster assembly to run it on a 9 millimeter handgun. Right, so that's when I learned a few practical lessons. Number one, swapping one can between platforms isn't always seamless, right? So, for example, I learned very quickly after shooting a MAGA to a 5.56, the can gets hot, very, very hot. And then trying to swap it mid session is a little awkward, could be dangerous because it's so hot if you don't have proper tools and proper gloves, right? And so, for my setup with the Dead Air can, swapping it from rifle to PCC platforms to pistol booster setup takes a couple little time and a lot of fiddling, right? So I had to be very mindful of my range sessions to break my sessions up to be more efficient with and minimize downtime. So for example, if I know I wanted to shoot, 5.56, maybe I'd go to the range and I would just focus on 5.56 so I wouldn't have to worry about switching the can off to go to 9 millimeter. And another day, if I wanted to shoot PCC, I would have the can ready and I'd shoot PCC. And then another day, if I wanted to go shoot handgun, I would break down the hub to put on the pistol booster, ready to go and shoot handgun. So trying to swap them out in one range session can be challenging. And so you really have to do a better job of planning your range time to be effective. The second thing, what I found is that dedicated cans have real advantages, right? If your budget allows it, dedicated rifle and pistol cans eliminate a lot of inefficiencies, right? So no adapter gymnastics, like I just talked about, less heat management between platforms, and potentially fewer compromises in size and weight for each gun type that you have. So I've definitely gone the route of a dedicated can with a mix of direct mounts and quick release mounts, which 100% makes my life easier. Not necessarily easier on the wallet, but certainly easier from an efficiency and enjoyment standpoint. So, when you're ready to evaluate your first can purchase, I think some of the questions we talked about, here's some additional things you're going to think about before you make your decision. So, we mentioned caliber. Do you want a can for a single versus multi-caliber? Is it just going to be an AR can with 5.56 or 7.62, or is it just is it going to be 9 millimeter, whatever your caliber is? You really need to understand what caliber you want to run so it can help you point in the right direction. The platform, is it a rifle platform? Is it a PCC platform? Which one's going to be the primary platform you're going to use it on, right? Or is it a pistol platform? So all that will help bake your decision as to getting the right can to fit your use case and making sure the can is sufficient to handle what you're going to throw in it to be able to use it effectively. The attachment method, right? Are you going to do a quick disconnect or are you going to do a direct thread, right? QD is obviously ideal for changes between platforms, but a dedicated direct thread can make your life much easier because all you're doing is just screwing it on and it's staying on there and it's on a dedicated platform. Could make your life easier. Also want to consider size and weight, right? So you want to balance, with different suppressors. You can look at their size, how long they are. Length typically and number of baffles typically equates to better suppression. But you need to weigh, the size and weight and what you're going to put it on and what you're going to use to determine what type of suppressor you need, right? So this suppressor, you can see how long it is. This one is a 556 dedicated suppressor. Doesn't give me quite the suppression that this does, but it certainly helps me from a compact standpoint in a more compact can and not having to carry such a big can, right? So you want to understand size and weight when you're making decisions. Materials and durability, right? So you've got cans that are made of a lot of different materials: aluminum, stainless, titanium, Inconel, right? So you want to research the materials as well and understand the differences and how that relates to how many rounds and the types of ammo that you plan to run through the cans, right? So all that research is available on YouTube. You can really understand what the different cans are made of to help you make your first decision on the first can you're going to get. Also, you want to look at, as you start to think about, hey, I think I want a dead air, or I think I want a Yankee can, whatever can you want, right? You want to look at some of the reviews and some of the reviewers that are doing some independent testing, and then you want to seek some real test data, not just kind of the marketing fluff that you get from some of these sites, right? So, spend some time doing some research before you make that investment. You also want to make sure whatever can you buy, that there's good company support from a service standpoint, right? If there's issues with your can you send it to them? Will they replace the baffles? Will they replace the front caps if the cap comes off? Whatever. You want to make sure you're getting it from a good can, a good company, reliable company that's going to help support you, which also ties into warranty and the reputation of the company, right? You want a maker that stands behind their products ultimately, right? So you don't want to get involved in a heavy can investment and the company's not going to stand behind their product. The other thing, which is really important, is you got to think of the cost, right? The total cost, because obviously there's a price for the can, and those prices can vary considerably depending on the can you're looking at and the manufacturer. You want to look at the can price. You want to look at the mounts and the adapters that you need to put on the mount if you're going to use a QD system. Whether it's a tri-lug or whether it's a chemo adapter, what have you. So you got to understand and factor that cost into it as well. Right now, we're still paying the tax stamp of $200. Obviously, in the beginning of the year, that's going to change, and we'll see what that means. And then also kind of the maintenance and upkeep of the cans, cleaning it, etc. So you want to really understand your total cost going in to the can purchase and the one that you're thinking about, so you really have it in mind. You understand, what this means for you financially. Okay, so this was a quick one. This is really designed to talk and give you some initial thoughts on what a first can purchase consideration set should look like. And so again, to recap, the three initial questions that should drive every purchase, right, for particularly a new purchase, is again the caliber that you think you're going to run, what are you going to use it for, and how often or do you want to swap it between hosts, right? And so you want to pick a suppressor to fit your mission. As an example, do you want a short and light can on a rifle for home defense, or do you want a mid to longer can for long range use or hunting, or on a rifle that you're doing long distance shots? You've got to understand what your use case is so you can help select the right can. Then you want to decide mounting by workflow, right? Do you want a direct thread, which I think has a lot of simplicity, or do you want a quick disconnect or QD for fast swaps, right? And again, fast is relative depending on what you're doing, how much you're shooting, and what platforms you're switching to quick disconnect during your range session. So you really need to think through all that. But if you take one thing away from today, buy the suppressor that matches how you actually shoot, right? If you shoot multiple platforms a lot and you can afford it, you should really consider getting dedicated cans, because it's going to make your life that much easier. If you're in a budget and multiple cans are not a thing that you can do, be honest about what platform you use the most and then optimize your choice from there. Again, check independent tests and reviews. factor in service and the transfer costs. And also one other thing is when you put a can on a rifle, you may need to plan to re-zero after your installation because your zero may shift after you put the can on. I've noticed some slight shifts in a couple of mine, but you should consider that and make sure you factor that into it as well. But most importantly, you should get a suppressor because once you do, you won't want to shoot unsuppressed again. I'm amazed at going to the range now, shooting suppressed, and people around me are not shooting suppressed. And I think to myself, how could I have gone this long without shooting suppressed? It's addictive. So enough suppressor talk for now, right? It's time to get into the kitchen and jump on a smoked lamb leg. And I promise it will be a fairly straightforward cook with sensational results. And so we'll see you in the kitchen. Thanks. All right, in the kitchen. So good discussion on suppressors. So now we're going to go ahead and jump into smoking this leg of lamb. Started the process yesterday with putting the seasonings on it and letting it sit overnight. What I use for the rub is I use this Meat Church Holy Cow barbecue rub. Also use some thyme, some rosemary, as well as some minced garlic and some olive oil to rub this whole about 5-pound leg of lamb down. This does have bones in it. And so, it got to sit overnight. And so you can see the seasonings are nice and adhered to it. And so we're ready to put it outside, put it on the smoker. So we'll do that. We'll see you out there. And then we'll keep tabs on its progress. See you in a minute. All right. Smoker's ready to go. We're set at 250. So today I'm actually going to be using a rotisserie on the smoker. Clearly you don't need to use a rotisserie. You can put it right on the grill grates and smoke this. I like the rotisserie because it's self-basting, right? And so this cook should take roughly on the rotisserie probably about 3-ish hours. I've got a meat temperature probe in here. We're looking to get this to an internal temp of around 140, right? Which will bring it to a nice medium, and that's how we like our lamb. And so we'll get this thing on. From a smoke standpoint, I'm using pecan wood. Pecan wood is one of my favorite woods, particularly for meat. So we'll throw this rotisserie attachment in here, and we'll get this thing spinning. And we'll check on it in a little bit. But again, 250 degrees temperature set for the smoker, and 140 degree internal temp is what I'm shooting for. This should take, like I said, probably 3 hours at 250, but we'll see. We'll check it and we'll see if how we do. So we'll check on it a little bit, and then we'll be back. Thanks. All right, let's take a quick peek and see how we're doing here. Oh yeah, looking fantastic. Hope you can see that. Bring you in a little closer. But it's temping right now at about 120, so we've got some more time left. It's cooking faster than I thought it would. It's been on about an hour and a half or so. So this will be ready probably in another 30 minutes, which will put it at about a 2-hour cook, and primarily because it's on the rotisserie. So it's self-basting, and so it's cooking faster, but it looks fantastic. So we'll let it do its thing. We'll take it off, we'll let it rest, and then we'll give it a taste. All right, back off the grill here. I pull this leg of lamb off at 140 degrees. It cooked for about 2 hours and 15 minutes or so. So we're gonna cut into it and see what we're working with and give it a taste. And so it's rested here for about 15 minutes. So let's check it out and see what we got. Oh yeah, that is a perfect medium in the middle here. Let's give it a cut over here as well. Yes, perfect medium. So we'll give this a quick taste here. Let's see what we're working with here. That's delicious. Tender, well seasoned, good smoke. Really, really good. So this is a pretty easy one to make. Like I said, Prepped it the night before, used the seasonings we talked about before, let it sit overnight. Pecan smoke, 250 degrees. I put it on the rotisserie, but you can put it on the grill. I think if you put it on the grates, it's going to take a little longer, probably 3.5, maybe 4 hours. But easy cook, easy to prep, and definitely easy to eat. So give it a try. See, and love to hear your comments about it in the comment section. So as always, we had a great talk about suppressors and how to pick your suppressor. Great cook here. And as always, if you like the content we're putting out here, if you like the gun content and the grilling content, hit that like button, drop some comments, and more importantly, please subscribe to support the channel. Really appreciate you watching. We'll see you next week with some more content for guns and grilling. And as always, smoke, sear, and shoot. Take care.